If I were 55 with $5 million, I would not retire the way that most people do. Because at this level, most people with $5 million don't fail financially or by running out of money. They fail strategically, quietly overpaying in taxes, mishandling the health insurance gap before Medicare, and never giving yourself permission to actually enjoy what you built. And as a private wealth advisor working with high net worth pre-retirees at the Clark Group, here's what I know to be true. $5 million at 55 isn't just a comfortable retirement. It's the single most flexible planning window that you can have. And the way that you set it up in year one largely decides whether the next 30 to 40 years deliver the retirement that you actually save for. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 moves that I'd make at this stage with $5 million in specific order, what each one is doing for the long-term plan, and what this type of retirement actually looks like day to day when it's set up correctly for full optimization. So let's get into it. Now, quick disclaimer before we begin. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. So let's first start with why $5 million at 55 is the most flexible planning window that you can have. If this window is so valuable, why do most people in this situation never fully use it? Well, what I see again and again is either one of two patterns. Either someone retires and just doesn't plan, so they just take distributions, pay the tax, and just assume things are fine because the balance is large. Or they keep working past 55, not because they need the money, but because the income feels safe and the transition feels uncertain. Meanwhile, the gap years quietly close. Year by year, the window shrinks and the planning work never gets done. And the cost of that is not small. The most expensive default decision you can make at this asset level is treating $5 million as a comfortable retirement instead of an optimization window. And in the retirement plans that I review and create, the difference in lifetime taxes between a coordinated approach and an unmanaged one can run into the 6 or even 7 figures. And obviously that's not a guarantee, and every situation is different and unique, but the gap is real, and it's usually very large. So the window is real, the cost of skipping it is meaningful, and the moves are very specific. And when we go over move number 2, it covers the single biggest practical problem with retiring at 55. One that most retirement plans that I do review don't even have a line item for. And as you'll see in a moment, it changes the entire income picture in retirement. Now, move number 1, map the accounts and figure out what's actually spendable. So the first move is not picking investments, it's not calling your broker, and it's definitely not reading YouTube comments or Reddit threads. It's mapping every account that you have and understanding what each dollar actually costs to spend. Well, what do I mean? Well, a $5 million balance can produce wildly different real spending power depending on where the money sits. So if you have $4 million in a traditional 401k and $1 million in a taxable brokerage account, that is a fundamentally different retirement than $2 million in a 401k, $2 million in a taxable account, and $1 million in a Roth. Same total dollar amount, but completely different retirement. And here's what that contrast actually means. The person with $4 or $5 million in a pre-tax 401k has a retirement that's largely owned by the IRS. Every dollar that they spend triggers an ordinary income tax bill. And the person with the same balance spread across all 3 account types gets to choose which dollars to pool in which order and at what tax cost. That flexibility is worth real money to the extent of potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 30-year retirement. And it never shows up in the balance. So think of each account type as a different price tag on the same dollar. The 401k dollar has a sticker on it that says, the IRS gets a cut when you spend this. The Roth dollar says, it's already settled, it's really all yours. The brokerage account says, only the growth gets taxed, but now at more favorable rates than income tax. So $5 million spread across all 3 is a completely different asset than $5 million in one bucket. And the difference lives entirely in what it costs to actually spend. So this mapping tells you exactly what each dollar costs to spend, and it surfaces opportunities that don't exist if you're drawing from only one account type. Now, move number 2, solve the health insurance gap. So before any income sequencing, I have to talk about the single biggest practical challenge for anyone that's retiring, let's say at 55. And it almost never gets discussed directly: health insurance. Now, if you do retire at 55, you are a full decade away from Medicare eligibility at 65, and that's okay. But that gap has to be covered. And private health insurance for a couple in their mid to late 50s can easily run $2,000 to $3,000 or more per month, depending on your age, your state, your income, and even your overall plan. That's potentially $24,000 to $36,000 a year before you've spent a dollar on anything else. So it has to be built into the plan from day one, not discovered in year 2 of retirement. And here's where the taxable brokerage account becomes one of the most powerful tools in the entire plan. The marketplace premiums are based on your modified adjusted gross income. So if you can manage your reportable income carefully, you may qualify for meaningful premium subsidies that bring that cost down substantially. And the brokerage account is the key. And this is exactly why. When you sell from a taxable brokerage account, only the gain portion is taxable. The original money that you put in, your cost basis, comes back to you completely tax-free. So picture a $2 million brokerage account where half the value is growth. Just to keep the math simple, if you sell $180,000 to cover your living expenses, only $90,000 of that actually shows up as income on your tax return. The other $90,000 is just your own principal coming back. Now compare that to pulling the same $180,000 from a traditional IRA, where every single dollar is taxable income. That's the difference between a tax return that qualifies for those ACA subsidies and one that blows right past the threshold. And I'll show you exactly how those gains get taxed in move number 3, because most people do get this wrong. Now, worst case, if your income is too high for those subsidies, you line item the full premium as a real expense and you just plan around it. This is very common for those high earners. And just because it becomes a higher line item doesn't mean you pump the brakes on retirement. At this level with $5 million, it can usually be manageable, but ignoring it is not an option. Now, let's say you don't have a meaningful taxable brokerage account. Well, there are bridges you can take advantage of. The first one being the Rule of 55. The Rule of 55 essentially lets you take penalty-free distributions from a former employer's 401k plan if you separated at 55 or older. Now, there's also Rule 72T, substantially equal periodic payments. It lets you take penalty-free IRA distributions before 59 and a half under a fixed IRS schedule. Both work and they are options, but neither gives you the income flexibility of a brokerage account. And with 72T in particular, you're locked into a fixed payment for the longer of 5 years or until 59 and a half. And deviating can trigger penalties retroactively. So if your only bridge runs through one of these rules, the income sequencing that we're about to discuss becomes even more critical, not less. And managing that income number carefully isn't just about health insurance. It's also the exact foundation that you need for the highest leverage tax move in this entire plan. And that's specifically move number 4, and the clock is already running. But first, the move that makes it all work. Move number 3, design the income sequencing. Designing the income sequence at 55 means that you're building a year-by-year cash flow plan that specifies which accounts that you draw from and in what amounts in each year between now and 75, and then of course beyond. You're not figuring this out as you go. You map it deliberately up front, and the sequence is built to fill the lower tax brackets intentionally, pulling from the right accounts in the right years to keep your taxable income as low as possible while still funding your lifestyle. It has to coordinate with your Social Security claiming strategy, and it has to leave room in the brackets for the conversions in move number 4. And here's the piece that almost everyone misunderstands. Long-term capital gains are not taxed at a single flat rate on the federal level. They're progressive. There's a 0% bracket, a 15% bracket, and a 20% bracket. And depending on your income level, some or even all of your gains may be taxed at 0%. Yes, 0%. So here's how you want to think about it. Picture your income as water filling up a very tall glass. Your ordinary income, let's say an IRA withdrawal or a pension, pours in first and settles at the bottom. Your capital gains float on top. And the rate that you pay on those gains depends entirely on how high the water has already risen. And any gains that fall within the remaining space below that 0% threshold, meaning your total income stays under that line, are completely tax-free. Only the gains that spill over get taxed at all. So it's never all or nothing. Part of your gains can be taxed at 0%, and the rest at 15% in the very same year. And specifically for 2026, a married couple filing jointly pays 0% on long-term capital gains up to $98,900 of taxable income. And for a single filer, it's half of that, $49,450. And remember, because this gets forgotten a lot, Those are taxable income figures, meaning after your deductions. So a married couple taking the standard deduction can have meaningfully more gross income than $98,900 and still land inside the 0% bracket. That's the mechanism behind move number 2. And it's how you can fund a real lifestyle, keep reportable income low enough to matter for those ACA subsidies, and pay little or nothing on gains along the way. Now, one critical caveat: your low bracket space is finite, and your Roth conversions and your 0% gain harvesting compete for the same room. So if you do a Roth conversion that raises the water in the glass, you can push $1 of those long-term gains from 0 to 15% in that same year. And your 12% conversion just cost you much more, 12% on the conversion plus the 15% on the gain that you bumped into. So clearly the system is layered, and that's exactly why splitting that bracket space year by year is the real planning work. So every choice about which account to draw from affects your bracket room next year, your conversion capacity, let's say the year after, the size of your required distributions at 75, and your Medicare premiums, let's say after that. So it's all connected. And starting with a coherent multi-year income sequence is a completely different outcome than just improvising. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I need to actually map this out for my own situation, that's exactly what we do for our clients at the Clark Group. You can use the link below to get started. Now, let's keep going, because the most powerful move in this entire plan is coming up next. Move number 4, the golden tax window. Now, the golden tax window is something that I talk about often, and it's one of the most optimal planning opportunities in retirement. So every dollar in a traditional IRA or 401k has a silent partner, the IRS, who's owed ordinary income tax the moment you withdraw it. So for now, that partner is happy to wait. They're dealing with compound interest in your retirement account, in your pre-tax retirement account. And depending on when you were born, those required minimum distributions now kick in. And the IRS starts pulling money out on its schedule and taxing it essentially on its own terms, whether you need the money or not. So between 55 and that day, you have a roughly 20-year window, what I call the golden tax window, to settle up with that partner on your terms instead. Well, how do you do that? Well, year by year, you can strategically convert traditional IRA and 401k dollars into a Roth at some of the lowest tax rates that you'll likely ever see again. And here's the part that people don't feel until it's gone and past. Every year you wait is a year of low bracket space that you can never buy back. The window doesn't pause for you. It just quietly gets shorter. So each year you identify how much room is left in your lower brackets after your living expenses. You convert an amount sized to that room, no more, no less, from your pre-tax account, again, into the Roth. And then from there, the converted dollars then grow tax-free for the rest of your life, and then can pass on to your heirs in a tax-free manner as well. You're essentially prepaying a smaller tax bill today to potentially avoid a much larger one later. So I work with a couple who retired at 54, a lawyer and an engineer, so very deliberate people. They started conversions in year 1, sized them carefully to stay inside the 22% bracket, and did it every single year for about a decade. By the time those RMDs would have kicked in, their pre-tax balance was a fraction of what it actually was. Their accountant actually called me the year they turned 73 and said their tax bill was almost unrecognizable compared to their peers. That is not luck. That is what using this golden tax window looks like when you actually do tax planning. So a couple retiring at 55 with $5 million, say $3.5 million in pre-tax accounts, who does nothing for 20 years, could be looking at a 6-figure required minimum distribution every year once they reach 75, potentially landing them in the 32% plus bracket on money that they may not even need to spend. And a systematic conversion plan during the gap years can substantially reduce that exposure. And the exact figure depends on the specifics, your balances, your brackets, time horizon, and of course, what the tax law actually does over the next 20 years. But the point being is that the leverage at this asset level is real. And there's a second reason to do this kind of planning, and it doesn't even involve your own life. It's for the surviving spouse. Because at some point, one spouse outlives the other, and the survivor's tax status flips from married filing jointly to single. This is called the widow's tax. The brackets compress, the income thresholds drop, and the same large IRA suddenly gets taxed at much harsher single tax rates. So how do you hedge that? Well, the Roth dollars don't care about the filing status. And that's exactly why they're worth so much to the person left behind as well. Now, one critical detail that people also get wrong. The tax that you owe on a conversion should very likely be paid from outside funds, not from the IRA itself. If you withhold funds for taxes from the IRA to cover the tax, you've shrunk the Roth and undermined the whole strategy. And at $5 million, you typically have enough or should have enough in a taxable account or in cash to fund the conversion without disrupting anything. And if you do the Roth conversion before the age of 59 and a half and withhold funds, those funds would be taxed at a 10% tax penalty. So we want to avoid that. So clearly it all has to be planned the right way from the start. And this is the single most common mistake that I do see with conversion plans, and it's completely avoidable. But here's what genuinely surprises most people that I work with, especially the most financially savvy ones. I've seen people execute all 4 of these moves perfectly and still not actually enjoy their retirement. And the reason has nothing to do with the math. And it's the thing that almost no advisor brings up in your planning meeting. That's move number 5. Set up the permission to spend framework. So here's something that surprises almost everyone that I tell it to. Most people with $5 million or more still struggle to actually spend their money in retirement. And I know it sounds absurd, but it's one of the most consistent patterns that I see in the people that we work with. And it has nothing to do with whether the math works. The person who built $5 million by age 55 did it through decades of discipline, choosing to save instead of spend, delaying gratification, saying no to things that felt unnecessary. They spent 30 years with one foot firmly on the brake with spending while trying to aggressively save. And that can be fine during the accumulation phase, but here's what nobody warns you about in the distribution phase. Retirement doesn't automatically move that foot over to the gas for you. The reflex that built that wealth is the same reflex that won't let you enjoy it. And it's a reflex that doesn't read the calendar. It's been running in the background for 30 years. And if you don't really think about it and you just leave it alone, it'll run for the next 30 years as well. So retiring without a permission to spend framework is like finally getting on the freeway after 30 years of stop and go traffic and never taking your foot off the brake. The road is clear, the car is paid for, but the reflex doesn't know that. So you may be thinking, okay, I hear you, Brandon, but what does that framework actually look like in practice? So it's not a pep talk, it's engineering, it's structuring. You start with a real lifestyle budget that names what you want your retirement to look like and what it costs. Then you automate it. You set up a monthly transfer from your portfolio into your checking account that works exactly like the paycheck that you spent 35 years cashing in. So spending feels like income arriving, not like raiding the nest egg. And then from there, you may want to pre-fund the things that people chronically defer. The big trip, the gifts to the kids, the giving. By moving that money into its own account, let's say at the start of the year, you've already kind of spent that money in your mind, and the only decision left is to enjoy it. We just want to be mindful about taxes if you are pre-funding those goals. The permission to spend stops being a daily act of willpower and becomes the default that your structure already made for you. Then you build a buffer, a reserve structure with certain buckets, so that unexpected expenses don't trigger the underspending reflex. Because without that specific buffer, every surprise feels like a threat to the plan. And the default behavior is to pull back. But the retirees who actually live the retirement that they've built, that they've created, those who travel, who give, who spend on what matters, are the ones who did this work deliberately, not the ones who hoped for permission. With $5 million at 55 set up correctly, a household in this situation can often support about 150 to 180,000 of confident after-tax spending a year at a minimum, and a genuinely comfortable lifestyle at that. That's after health insurance, after taxes. That's real spending money. And the exact sustainable number depends on your asset mix, your return assumptions, your risk tolerance, and how long the money has to last for. But the lifestyle this supports is a very good one. And the gap years between 55 and 75 are actually spent executing the golden tax window conversions and managing the income sequence, not panicking about cash flow. So you know where the income is coming from each year. You know roughly what the tax bill looks like. There are no surprises. And when you finally take Social Security at 62 or 70 or somewhere in between, it layers into an already optimized income picture. Your income goes up, your withdrawal rate drops, and the portfolio has more room to keep growing. And what separates the people who live this version from the ones who don't? Well, the ones who live it executed those 5 moves deliberately in year 1. And the ones who don't default into a comfortable but unoptimized retirement that still kind of works. but it can leave real money and real life experiences all on the table. And the difference isn't visible year to year, but across 30 to 40 years, it compounds into something significant. And when thinking about retirement, that's exactly the integrated planning work that we do at the Clark Group. Because $5 million at 55 is the situation where doing this work well has the largest lifetime payoff. And remember, the problem that I described at the very start, the IRS forcing money out of your pre-tax accounts later in retirement, pushing you into those higher brackets, whether you need the money or not, well, that's exactly the problem that these 5 moves are all designed to address head on. So everything I walked through today, the account mapping, the health insurance strategy, the income sequence, the golden tax window, the permission to spend framework, that's essentially the profit process. It's the planning system that we use at the Clark Group with our high net worth clients that we work with. And it's built specifically for people in exactly this situation. So if you're within 5 years of retirement and you want to know what this looks like applied to your numbers, your accounts, your tax picture, your timeline, well, you can use the link below to schedule a complimentary Zoom call with our team. No pitch, no pressure, just a real conversation about whether your plan is set up to get the most out of what you've built. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, please feel free to subscribe to see more videos similar to this in the future. I will see you in the next video.